Hello, first graders. This is Miss Carter, and today we're going to read a fantasy. And we know that fantasies are stories that could not happen in real life. And we're going to be practicing identifying the story structure in this story titled The Curious Garden. Now, look at this picture. You can already kind of tell that it's a fantasy because we know that we probably wouldn't sit on top of a tree and read in real life, would we? So while we're reading this story, I want you to be thinking about what problem the characters have in the beginning and what events happen during the middle to help them solve the problem, and then be thinking about the end, how the problem was solved and how everything just kind of wrapped up, ended in a good way. Because just like riding on a roller coaster, bloop, looking at fantasy stories and identifying their story structure is fun too. I wonder why the garden is curious. Let's find out, because that's kind of funny, isn't it, that a garden is curious? Wonder what the curious garden's going to find out.
The Curious Garden, Peter Brown. There once was a city without gardens or trees or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place.
What do you think makes a place dreary? Kind of all the smog coming out. Maybe if there's no flowers, there's no greenery, that makes something dreary, wouldn't it?
However, there was one boy who loved being outside. Even on drizzly days, while everyone else stayed inside, you could always find Liam happily splashing through his neighborhood. It was on one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway, as he did from time to time, when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up to the tracks. The railway had stopped working ages ago, and since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for the curious boy to do.
It says right here that he's curious. I wonder what Liam is curious about. Let's keep reading to find out. I think he's curious to see what's up the stairs.
Liam ran up the stairs, pushed open the door, and stepped out onto the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely patch of color. Wildflowers and plants were the last things he had expected to find up there. But when he took a closer look, it became clear that the plants were dying. They needed a gardener. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help. So he returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned, and he had a few pruning problems, but the plants patiently waited while Liam found better ways of gardening. As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden.
Wow. How does Liam become a real gardener? Look at how those look like Shasta daisies. I love daisies. Look, and he's giving the plants water. And look, it looks right here like he's singing to the plants. He's giving them all the things they need. So he has become a real gardener, hasn't he?
Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway ahead of it, the garden was growing restless. It wanted to explore. The tough little weeds and mosses were the first to move. They popped up farther and farther down the tracks and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. Over the next few months, Liam and the curious garden explored every corner of the railway.
Wow. So most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. Wow, we had all kind of space in front of it. Look at all the beautiful flowers. It says that they explored every corner of the railway. Look at them go, planting all of that. Now look at all those daisies. Look how that garden has grown. And now look at there. He's just looking over the tower and just looking out into the city. But look at that garden. It's beautiful, isn't it?
After spending his spring and summer and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season, and for the first time since he'd become a gardener, Liam could not visit the plants.
Why do you think he couldn't visit the plants, y'all? Look at all the snow covering. A lot of times when we have bad weather, people can't travel, so it looks like he can't get there because of the snow.
Rather than waste his winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for spring. After 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to the railway. Winter had taken a toll on the garden, but thanks to Liam's planning, his handy new tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon awoke from their winter sleep. The garden had always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first. They popped up farther and farther from the railway and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. A few plants popped up where they didn't belong. Others mysteriously popped up all at once.
Look, the plants don't belong on a stop sign, do they? Look where they popped up right there in this plant.
But the most surprising things that popped up were the new gardeners.
Look at all the new people from town coming in. Look, I see some here. Even the stairs have grass on them. Boys and girls, it looks like they put in a pond right there and have some lily pads. Wow, and they're even shaping the shrubbery to look like animals. I see a moose and an elephant and a giraffe. Wow, they've done lots of gardening up there, haven't they?
Many years later, the entire city had blossomed. But of all of the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began.
Oh, right there. And look, it doesn't look dreary anymore, does it? It looks beautiful with bright colors. You do not see any smog coming out of the chimneys. What a wonderful book. I really enjoyed it, boys and girls. And we're going to talk some more about what happened in the beginning, middle, and end. And I'm going to do a graphic organizer with you. And then you'll be doing one on your own. Thank you for listening. See you back in just a minute.